Black girl's boyfriend yelled, "You're dead when we get home." What the Korean Mafia boss did next left him terrified. Part 2. A year after that fateful night at Fusion 82 when Derek's threat, "You're dead when we get home," changed everything, Jasmine stood transformed. Where once she tried to make herself invisible across from an abusive boyfriend, now she commanded the room as Mrs. Kong, founder of a foundation that had saved over 100 women like herself. The gallery fell silent as the sound of breaking glass echoed through the room. Jasmine Kang's hand froze mid-air, paintbrush dripping cobalt blue onto the pristine floor. Her heart hammered against her ribs as security personnel materialized from corners of the exhibition hall, moving with practiced efficiency toward the source of the disturbance. Unlike that night in the restaurant when everyone had looked away, pretending not to notice her fear, now all eyes turned toward her. Not with pity, but with respect. Min-ho had taught her that watching without turning away was sometimes the most powerful act of protection. Now she was the one being watched, being protected, being valued. But today, Jasmine straightened her spine and set down her brush with deliberate calm. Today, she wore the jade ring Min-ho had placed on her finger 6 months ago, in a ceremony that blended Korean traditions with her own Baptist upbringing. Today, she was Jasmine Kong, founder of the Kong Arts Initiative, wife of one of the most powerful men in the city, a woman who had transformed her trauma into purpose. "Everything's under control, Mrs. Kong," said Taewon, appearing silently at her side. "Just a guest who had too much champagne and knocked over a sculpture stand. Nothing more sinister." She nodded, releasing the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Is Min-ho aware?" "Mr. Kong is already handling it." Taewon's expression remained neutral, but Jasmine detected the subtle pride in his voice. Min-ho's security chief had initially viewed their relationship with skepticism. An American civilian marrying into the Kong family brought complications, vulnerabilities. But over the past year, even Taewon had become a believer in what they were building together. Jasmine turned back to survey the exhibition hall, where the rhythm of the evening had already resumed. Women who had once hidden bruises beneath long sleeves now stood proudly beside artwork that chronicled their journeys from victims to survivors. Donors circulated with checkbooks open, impressed by both the talent on display and the foundation's impressive results. Over 100 women safely extracted from abusive situations in the past year alone. This was what redemption looked like, Jasmine thought. This was what happened when you redirected pain into purpose, when you refused to let the past define your future. And when you had a partner like Min-ho Kong, who had proven that even the most complicated legacy could be transformed into something that healed rather than harmed. Across the room, she spotted him, impeccable in his tailored charcoal suit, commanding attention without seeking it, his expression softening visibly as their eyes met. 1 year ago, he had been a stranger who intervened when everyone else looked away. Now he was her husband, her partner, the man whose dangerous world she had entered willingly and reshaped from within. Neither of them could have predicted how their lives would intertwine after that fateful night at Fusion 82. Neither of them could have imagined the challenges they would face together, or the joy they would build from the ashes of her fear and his isolation. And neither of them had any way of knowing that tonight, as the Kong Arts Initiative celebrated its first anniversary, both their pasts were converging in a threat that would test everything they had built. Jasmine stood in the center of the exhibition hall, watching as a young woman named Keisha explained her painting to a small crowd of attendees. The piece, a chaotic swirl of darkness giving way to fragile, tentative light, had already received 3 purchase offers that evening. Keisha's hands trembled slightly as she spoke, but her voice remained steady, growing stronger with each question answered. 1 year ago, Keisha had arrived at the Kong Arts Initiative with bruises hidden beneath long sleeves and a story Jasmine knew by heart. A boyfriend whose love had morphed into control, whose compliments had twisted into criticism, whose touch had transformed from gentle to violent so gradually she hadn't recognized the danger until she was drowning in it. Now, watching Keisha stand tall before her artwork, Jasmine felt a familiar rush of pride and purpose. This was why she had built this place. This was why the nightmares and flashbacks and occasional moments of inexplicable panic were worth enduring. Because for every woman who found her way here, the Foundation offered something Jasmine herself had once desperately needed. Not just safety, but the chance to reclaim her voice, her vision, her future. "She's doing well," Minho said, materializing beside her with the silent grace that still occasionally startled Jasmine even after a year of marriage. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, his only concession to the art world's more relaxed dress code being the absence of a tie. "That's her third sale tonight." "Fourth?" Jasmine corrected, slipping her arm through his. "A collector from Manhattan just put in an offer while you were on your call." Minho smiled, the subtle softening of his features that most people never got to see. "You've created something extraordinary here." "We created it," Jasmine reminded him, leaning against his shoulder. "Your money, my vision. Your heart," he countered. "Your understanding of what these women need. That can't be bought or taught." The Kong Arts Initiative occupied a renovated warehouse in what had once been an industrial district but was rapidly becoming the city's most vibrant arts neighborhood. A transformation accelerated by Minho's strategic property acquisitions in the area. The foundation provided everything from emergency housing to legal assistance to therapy. But its heart was the art program. Painting, sculpture, photography, mixed media, any form of creative expression that helped survivors transform trauma into something tangible, something they could see and name and, eventually, move beyond. In the year since its founding, the initiative had helped over 100 women escape abusive situations and begin rebuilding their lives. Tonight's exhibition, Emergence, showcased works by 12 of those women, their art displayed alongside pieces by established artists who had donated their work to raise funds for the foundation's expansion. "The senator's wife asked about your piece," Minho said, nodding toward Jasmine's contribution to the exhibition. A large canvas dominated by vibrant blues and deep purples, with golden threads weaving through the composition like veins of precious metal in stone. "I think you might have made another convert to the cause." "Good. We need the political support for the shelter expansion." Jasmine scanned the room, mentally calculating the evening's likely donations. "Have you heard from Junho about the property in Westside?" "It's ours," Minho confirmed. "The paperwork will be finalized next week. We can start renovations immediately." Jasmine squeezed his arm in excitement. The Westside property would double the foundation's capacity for emergency housing, a critical need given that they were currently turning away 3 women for every one they could accommodate. "That's wonderful news. I thought you'd be pleased." Minho's gaze shifted subtly, his attention caught by something, or someone, across the room. His expression didn't change, but Jasmine had learned to read the microscopic shifts in his posture, the almost imperceptible tensing of his shoulders that signaled he'd spotted something concerning. "What is it?" she asked quietly. "Nothing to worry about," he assured her, but his eyes remained fixed on a point near the entrance. "Just an unexpected guest." Jasmine followed his gaze to where a man in an expensive suit was examining one of the sculptures with studied casualness. She didn't recognize him, but she recognized the type, the same polished, predatory aura that surrounded many of Minho's business associates, the ones who hadn't quite embraced his vision of legitimacy. "Who is he?" Minho hesitated. He never lied to her. That had been their agreement from the beginning, but there were times when his honesty came with careful edits. "Park Sung-jae," he said finally. "He represents certain interests in my community that are resistant to change." Translation: a rival who opposed Minho's efforts to transition his family's operations from the shadows into legitimate enterprise. Jasmine had learned to navigate these oblique references, to understand what remained unspoken in Minho's world. "Should I be concerned that he's here?" she asked, keeping her voice light, her smile in place for any watching eyes. "No." Minho's response was immediate, definitive. "He wouldn't dare make trouble at your event. This is merely—" He paused, searching for the right words. "A reconnaissance. He's curious about my new priorities." Before Jasmine could respond, Maya appeared at her side, resplendent in a deep green dress that complemented her dark skin and newly installed braids. "Your parents just arrived," Maya announced, her voice carrying the mix of excitement and warning that only a best friend could convey. "Your mother is already critiquing the catering." Jasmine felt a flutter of anxiety. Her relationship with her parents had been strained since she'd eloped with Minho rather than having the traditional church wedding they'd expected. The fact that Minho was Korean had been less of an issue than his reputation. Her father had done his research and discovered enough about the Kong family's history to be deeply concerned. Their visits were infrequent and always tense, despite Jasmine's efforts to bridge the gap. "I'll handle the catering crisis," Minho said, pressing a brief kiss to her temple. "You go welcome your parents." "You don't have to. I insist." His smile held genuine warmth. "Besides, your mother and I reached an understanding during their last visit. I think she's starting to believe I'm not the devil incarnate." "Just a minor demon, then?" Jasmine teased. "Progress is progress." Minho squeezed her hand before releasing it. "I'll join you shortly." As he moved away through the crowd, Jasmine noticed Park Sung-jae tracking Minho's movement with calculated interest. There was something in the man's gaze that made her uneasy. Not fear, exactly, but a sense of anticipation, as if he were waiting for something specific to happen. "Earth to Jasmine," Maya prompted, following her gaze. "Trouble?" "I'm not sure," Jasmine admitted. "Just a feeling." Maya had been her roommate, confidant, and lifeline during the early months of her relationship with Minho. Though initially skeptical of the whirlwind romance, particularly given Jasmine's recent escape from Derek, Maya had gradually become one of their strongest supporters. She understood, as few others did, the complexity of loving someone like Minho Kong. "Want me to have him removed?" Maya asked, only half joking. "I've got connections with security now. Dating the head of Minho's personal detail has its perks." Jasmine smiled at the reference to Maya's 6-month relationship with Taewon, Minho's head of security. Another unexpected outcome of that fateful night at Fusion 82. "Let's not start an international incident," Jasmine said. "Come on. Help me face my parents." They found Dr. and Mrs. Taylor near the refreshment table, her father looking uncomfortable in his suit. Her mother engaged in what appeared to be an intense discussion with the catering manager about the temperature of the hors d'oeuvres. "Mom, Dad," Jasmine called, opening her arms for the awkward but sincere hugs that followed. "I'm so glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss our daughter's big night," her father said gruffly. At 62, William Taylor remained an imposing figure. Tall and broad-shouldered, with the physicality of a man who had worked his way through medical school as a hospital security guard. "Place looks good. Impressive turnout." "The food is cold," her mother announced, never one to mince words. Constance Taylor had raised 3 children while working full-time as a high school principal, and had developed the efficient directness of someone perpetually short on time. "But the art is powerful. Those girls have been through hell, haven't they?" "Women," Jasmine corrected gently. "And yes, they have. That's what makes tonight so important. It's a testament to their resilience." Her mother's gaze swept the room, cataloging details with professional precision. "Your husband's people are out in force tonight." It wasn't a criticism, exactly, but Jasmine felt the undercurrent of concern. The discreet but visible security presence throughout the event. Men in suits with earpieces, positioned at strategic points around the perimeter, was a constant reminder of the world Minho inhabited. A world that, by extension, now included Jasmine. "Standard precaution," Jasmine explained. "We have valuable artwork and high-profile guests." Her mother's expression suggested she wasn't fooled by the explanation, but she let it pass. "Your painting is exquisite, by the way. Much stronger composition than the last series." From Constance Taylor, this was effusive praise. Jasmine felt a warmth bloom in her chest, the perpetual desire for parental approval never quite fading, even at 29. "Thank you, Mom. That means a lot." "Your mother's right," her father agreed, his gaze finding Jasmine's canvas across the room. There's something, I don't know, more confident about it. More certain. That's exactly what I was trying to convey, Jasmine said, pleased he'd noticed. The journey from doubt to certainty, from vulnerability to strength. Her father's expression softened slightly. Sounds like you've made that journey yourself. Before Jasmine could respond, she felt a wave of nausea crash over her without warning. The sensation was so sudden and intense that she swayed slightly, reaching for Maya's arm to steady herself. Jazz? Maya's voice sounded distant. You okay? Fine, Jasmine managed, willing the queasiness to subside. Just a little lightheaded. Probably should have eaten something before all the speeches. Her mother's eyes narrowed with maternal suspicion. When did this start? Mom, I'm fine. Just busy with the event and… How many mornings this week have you woken up nauseated? Constance interrupted, her tone brooking no evasion. Jasmine felt heat rise in her cheeks. Trust her mother to zero in on the very thing she'd been deliberately not thinking about for the past 2 weeks. That's not. Oh my God, Maya breathed, her eyes widening as understanding dawned. Are you? No, Jasmine said quickly. Too quickly. I mean, I don't know. Maybe. It's not. I haven't taken a test yet. Her father cleared his throat awkwardly, suddenly finding the canapés fascinating. I think I'll go find William Jr. He said he might stop by. As he made his strategic retreat, Jasmine's mother stepped closer, lowering her voice. Does Minho know? There's nothing to know, Jasmine insisted, even as another wave of queasiness suggested otherwise. It could be stress. The foundation expansion, the new shelter, this exhibition. Or it could be my first grandchild, Constance said, her expression softening into something Jasmine rarely saw, vulnerability, hope. Have you thought about that? The truth was, Jasmine had thought of little else since the first morning she'd barely made it to the bathroom in time. The possibility thrilled and terrified her in equal measure. A child. Minho's child. A life created from their love, but also a life that would be born into Minho's complicated world, with all its shadows and dangers and unspoken rules. We haven't really discussed children, Jasmine admitted. Not in any concrete way. That wasn't entirely accurate. They'd spoken of children in the abstract someday eventually when the time was right, when Minho's business interests were fully legitimate, when the more dangerous elements of his world were safely in the past. A future that always seemed just beyond the horizon. Well, sometimes life makes these decisions for us, her mother said, with the pragmatism that had carried her through decades of educational crises and family emergencies. The question is whether you're ready for that possibility. Before Jasmine could answer, a commotion near the entrance caught everyone's attention. Security personnel were moving with sudden purpose, communications devices at their ears. Taewon appeared at Maya's side, his expression grave. We need to move Jasmine to a secure location, he said without preamble. Now. What? Why? Jasmine looked around for Minho, but couldn't spot him in the crowd. What's happening? Security threat, Taewon said, already guiding her toward a side door, his body positioned protectively between her and the main entrance. Minho asked me to get you out immediately. Maya and Constance followed close behind, her mother's face set in the same determined expression Jasmine remembered from childhood emergencies. Calm, focused, unflappable. What about my father? The guests? Jasmine resisted Taewon's gentle pressure, looking back at the exhibition hall where people continued mingling, unaware of any danger. Standard procedure for all guests is already in motion, Taewon assured her. Your father will be fine. Right now, you are the priority. Something in his tone sent a chill through Jasmine. This wasn't a general precaution. The threat was specific, personal. Is it Derek? The question escaped before she could stop it. Derek, who had disappeared from her life after that confrontation at the gallery opening 6 months ago. Derek, who had sworn it wasn't over even as security escorted him out. We don't know yet, Taewon said, which wasn't a no. Please, Jasmine. Min-ho was very clear. Your safety above all else. They reached a service corridor that led away from the main exhibition space. 2 more security personnel joined them, creating a protective formation around the women. Jasmine's mother kept pace without complaint, though her high heels couldn't have made the brisk walk comfortable. Where are we going? Jasmine asked as they passed through a series of doors, moving deeper into the building's back areas. Safe room, Taewon explained tersely. Secure location within the building. Standard protocol. Of course there was a safe room. Of course there was a protocol. This was Min-ho's world, where threats were anticipated, contingencies planned, risks managed with military precision. A year into their marriage, Jasmine was still discovering layers of security she hadn't known existed, all designed to protect her without alarming her. The safe room turned out to be a comfortable office space concealed behind what looked like a storage closet. Inside, monitors displayed security feeds from throughout the building, including the main exhibition hall where guests continued their evening seemingly undisturbed. Another screen showed the exterior of the building, where several black SUVs had arrived, disgorging more men in suits who took up positions around the perimeter. What exactly is the threat? Constance demanded once the door was secured behind them. My daughter deserves to know what's happening. Taewon hesitated, his professional mask slipping slightly. We received credible information about a potential attack on the Foundation, specifically targeting Jasmine. Attack? Jasmine's voice sounded strange to her own ears. What kind of attack? We're still assessing, Taewon said carefully. But the information came from a trusted source. Min-ho is handling it personally. On one of the monitors, Jasmine spotted Min-ho in conversation with Park Sung-jae, their body language tense but controlled. Jun-ho had joined them, flanked by 2 men Jasmine recognized as part of Min-ho's inner circle of security. That man, she said, pointing to Park. He's involved somehow. Yes. Taewon didn't elaborate, but his expression confirmed her suspicion. Maya moved to Jasmine's side, taking her hand. Jazz, you need to sit down. You're white as a sheet. The reminder of her possible condition sent a fresh wave of anxiety through Jasmine. A baby, possibly her baby, growing inside her even as outside dangers circled. The thought crystallized something in her mind. A fierce, sudden protectiveness that cut through fear and confusion. I need to speak to Min-ho, she said, her voice steadier now. Immediately. He's managing the situation, Taewon began. I don't care. Get him on the phone. Now. The authority in her tone surprised even Jasmine herself. It was the voice she used with Foundation donors, with city officials, with anyone who underestimated her because of her youth or gender. The voice that said, I will not be dismissed. Taewon recognized that tone. Without further argument, he made the call. Minutes later, the secure door opened to admit Min-ho himself, his expression shifting from tightly controlled anger to visible relief as his eyes found Jasmine. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and pulled her into an embrace that was almost painful in its intensity. You're safe, he murmured against her hair, his heart pounding against her cheek. That's all that matters. Jasmine allowed herself a moment to absorb his presence, his warmth, his solidity, the sense of absolute safety she always felt in his arms. Then she pulled back to look at his face. Tell me what's happening, she said. All of it. Min-ho glanced at the others in the room. Taewon, Maya, Constance, then back to Jasmine. Perhaps we should speak privately. No. Jasmine shook her head firmly. Whatever it is, I want them to hear it too. No more compartmentalizing. Min-ho. Not tonight. Something shifted in his expression. A recognition of the steel beneath her usual gentle demeanor. After a moment, he nodded once. We received information about a coordinated attempt to target the Foundation. He began, his voice calm and measured. More specifically, to target you. The initial threat appeared to be focused on tonight's event. A disruption of some kind, possibly violent. Who? Jasmine demanded. And why? Minho's jaw tightened. The who is complex. The immediate threat comes from a faction within Park Sung-jae's organization. Individuals who believe targeting you is an effective way to discourage my business decisions. Decisions like going legitimate, Jasmine supplied, understanding immediately. Moving out of traditional territories. Yes. Minho's gaze held approval for her quick grasp of the situation. But there's more. The intelligence indicates they've been in contact with someone from your past. Someone with personal grievances. Derek, Jasmine said flatly. It wasn't a question. Yes, he's been feeding them information, your routines, security vulnerabilities, details about the Foundation's operations. Minho's expression darkened. He appears to have found common cause with those who wish to harm us. The news should have terrified her. A year ago it would have. But the woman she'd become, Mrs. Kong, founder of the Kong Arts Initiative, survivor and advocate, felt something entirely different. Anger. Cold, clarifying anger. So my abusive ex-boyfriend is working with your business rivals to, what, scare me? Hurt me? Get revenge. Jasmine's voice remained steady despite the storm of emotions beneath. All because I escaped him, and you're changing your business model? A crude but accurate assessment, Minho confirmed. And the threat tonight? Neutralized, for the moment. Park came to warn me not to threaten. It seems even he has limits. Attacking a charity event for abuse survivors crossed a line he wasn't willing to cross. How magnanimous of him, Constance commented dryly from where she sat, her posture as rigid as a general surveying a battlefield. And what happens now? Minho turned to address Jasmine's mother directly. For all their differences, there had always been a mutual respect between them. Two people who approached life with clear-eyed pragmatism. Now we increase security, adjust protocols, and address the root of the problem. His tone made it clear that addressing the problem would not involve official channels or legal niceties. Jasmine and the Foundation will remain completely safe. At what cost? Jasmine asked quietly. More guards? More restrictions? Living behind higher walls. Minho's expression softened as he looked at her. I know what you're thinking, that this is the price of being with me. Living in fear, always looking over your shoulder. But that's not what I want for you. For us. What do you want, then? Freedom, he said simply. Security without cages. The life you deserve. The life we're building together. He took her hands in his touch gentle despite the strength she knew his hands possessed. Which is why I've made a decision. I'm accelerating our timeline. As of tomorrow, I'm divesting completely from all enterprises that operate in gray areas. Everything. All of it. Above board, transparent, legitimate. The room went silent. Jasmine stared at him, processing the magnitude of what he was saying. Minho had always planned to complete his family's transformation from shadowed power to legitimate business empire, but the process had been gradual, careful, designed to avoid exactly the kind of conflict that had erupted tonight. You can't just walk away, she said, understanding the implications better than most. The transitions you've already made have created tension. A complete withdrawal will create more, Minho acknowledged. Significant resistance in certain quarters, which is why it must be decisive, absolute, and backed by overwhelming strength. His expression hardened slightly. I have prepared for this possibility. The necessary arrangements are in place. Won't that put you in danger? The question came from Maya, who had remained silent until now, watching the exchange with worried eyes. There will be risks, Minho admitted, but they're manageable, and they're mine to bear, not Jasmine's. Except they are mine, Jasmine said firmly, because I'm your wife, because we're partners, because… She stopped, suddenly aware that this wasn't how she'd planned to tell him. Not here, not now, not like this. Minho's gaze sharpened, catching her hesitation. Because what? Jasmine glanced at her mother, who gave an almost imperceptible nod of encouragement. Taking a deep breath, she met Minho's eyes directly. Because I might be pregnant. The words hung in the air between them. Min-ho went perfectly still, his expression shifting through emotions too rapid to name before settling on something that looked like wonder. Pregnant, he repeated, the word carrying a reverence she'd never heard in his voice before. You're sure? No, Jasmine admitted. I haven't taken a test. But the signs are there, and my mother, who has an uncanny ability to diagnose these things, seems pretty convinced. Min-ho's gaze flicked briefly to Constance, who nodded with the confidence of a woman who had raised 3 children and supervised hundreds more. A baby? Min-ho said softly, his hand moving almost unconsciously toward Jasmine's still flat stomach. He stopped just short of touching her, as if seeking permission. Jasmine took his hand and placed it against her abdomen. Maybe, probably. The vulnerability in Min-ho's expression was so rare, so precious, that Jasmine felt tears prick her eyes. This was the man beneath the calculated exterior, beneath the power and danger and control. This was the heart of him, exposed only to those he trusted completely. This changes everything, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. And nothing. It makes what I must do more urgent, but the decision remains the same. Our child will not grow up in shadows. Our child, Jasmine repeated, the reality of it beginning to sink in. Our family. Min-ho gathered her close again, his embrace gentler now, mindful of the potential life they'd created. Over his shoulder, Jasmine saw her mother discreetly wipe away a tear, saw Maya beaming despite the tension of the situation, saw Taewon pointedly looking away to give them privacy. I need to finish dealing with tonight's situation, Min-ho said finally, pulling back enough to look at her face. Then we'll go home and talk. Really talk about what comes next. I'm coming with you, Jasmine said immediately. Min-ho started to object, then seemed to reconsider. To speak with Park, you mean? Yes, this involves me directly. I should be part of the conversation. A year ago, he might have refused outright, citing safety concerns. But their relationship had evolved, each of them learning to respect the other's strengths, to recognize when to protect and when to partner. All right, Min-ho agreed after a moment's consideration. But you stay with me at all times. And at the first sign of any threat, you leave immediately with Taewon. No arguments. Agreed. Constance stepped forward, her expression a mixture of concern and pride. Are you sure about this, Jasmine? In your condition? Mom, we don't even know for certain that I am pregnant, Jasmine reminded her gently. And I need to do this, not just for Min-ho, but for myself. For all the women at the foundation who are watching me, learning what it means to reclaim your power. Her mother studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You always were the strongest of my children, she said quietly, even when you didn't believe it yourself. 20 minutes later, Jasmine sat beside Min-ho in a private room off the main exhibition hall, facing Park Sung-jae across a polished conference table. The older man's surprise at her presence was evident, though he masked it quickly with a respectful bow. Mrs. Kong, he said, his English heavily accented but precise. I did not expect to meet you under these circumstances. I didn't expect my charity event to become a battlefield, Jasmine replied evenly. Yet here we are. A flicker of what might have been admiration crossed Park's face. Indeed, Min-ho sat with deceptive relaxation, his posture open but his eyes alert, missing nothing. You've delivered your warning, Sung-jae. I've expressed my gratitude for that courtesy. Now, let's discuss what happens next. Park's gaze shifted between them, assessing. What happens next is not entirely within my control. There are factions, young men with ambitious ideas and little patience. I can advise, but I cannot always restrain. Then perhaps it's time to consider whether these young men truly represent your interests, Min-ho suggested, his tone conversational despite the deadly serious undercurrent. Whether their enthusiasm might become a liability rather than an asset. Park nodded slowly, understanding the message beneath the diplomatic language. And your plans? There are rumors. Not rumors, Minho said firmly. Facts. As of tomorrow, I am withdrawing completely from all traditional territories. All enterprises under my family's control will operate entirely within legitimate channels. He leaned forward slightly. This is not negotiable, Sung-jae. It's happening regardless of opposition. The older man's expression revealed nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. What Minho was proposing represented a seismic shift in the community's power structure. Territories that had been balanced for decades suddenly open, relationships and arrangements disrupted, the entire ecosystem forced to reorganize. Such transitions are rarely smooth, Park observed finally. They don't need to be bloody, Minho countered. I've prepared generous arrangements for those who will be affected. Fair compensation, alternative opportunities, smooth handovers. This doesn't have to become a conflict. And those who reject these arrangements? Minho's smile didn't reach his eyes. Will find me less accommodating. The threat was clear without being explicit. Minho might be choosing legitimacy, but he retained the full capacity for the kind of decisive action that had built his family's empire. Anyone who mistook his ethical evolution for weakness would regret that error. And what of the American? Park asked, turning his attention to Jasmine. Your former partner who now seeks allies among my associates. Derek Wallace is a desperate, bitter man, Jasmine said, surprised at how steady her voice remained. Whatever he's promised your people, whatever he's told them about me or my husband, it's colored by his own failures and resentments. He claims intimate knowledge of your security, your routines, claims he can provide access that would otherwise be impossible to obtain. I have no doubt he believes that, Jasmine acknowledged. But Derek never truly knew me. Not then and certainly not now. His information is outdated, his understanding limited. He's a weapon that will backfire on anyone foolish enough to use him. Park studied her with new interest, as if truly seeing her for the first time. Not just Minho Kang's American wife, not just a charity founder, but a woman with her own strength, her own insight, her own place in this complex equation. You speak with confidence, Mrs. Kong. I speak from experience, Mr. Park. I survived Derek once. I've built a life helping other women survive men like him. If he thinks he can frighten me now, when I have everything to fight for. Jasmine's hand moved unconsciously to her stomach, the gesture subtle but noticed by Park's sharp eyes. Then he understands even less than I thought. Something shifted in the older man's demeanor. A subtle relaxation, a reassessment. He looked at Minho with what appeared to be genuine respect. You've chosen well, Minho. A worthy partner. I didn't choose, Minho corrected, his hand finding Jasmine's beneath the table. We found each other, and everything I do now, every decision, every risk, every change, is in service of the future we're building together. Park nodded slowly, coming to some internal decision. I will speak to certain individuals. Make it clear that targeting your wife or her foundation would be unacceptable. Not just to you, but to me personally. And Derek Wallace? Minho pressed. Will find his new allies suddenly unavailable, Park assured them. Some mistakes cannot be undone, but they need not be compounded. The meeting concluded with formal bows and careful promises. As Park left, flanked by his own security detail, Jasmine felt the tension begin to drain from her body, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Do you trust him? She asked Minho once they were alone. Trust is a relative concept in our world, Minho replied, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. But yes, I believe he'll keep his word. Park is old school, traditional values, traditional codes. Once he's committed publicly, his honor is at stake. And Derek? Minho's expression hardened. Will be dealt with permanently, not by Park's people but by mine. Enough is enough. Jasmine didn't ask what dealt with meant. There were still boundaries in their relationship. Lines she chose not to cross, details she preferred not to know. Not because she couldn't handle the truth, but because some truths weren't hers to carry. "Let's go home," she said instead. "I think we've given everyone enough excitement for one night." Minho smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his whole face. Home sounds perfect. Later that night, in the sanctuary of their bedroom in Minho's, their hillside estate, Jasmine sat cross-legged on their bed, holding a plastic stick with two distinct pink lines visible in the small window. Minho sat beside her, his usual composure completely abandoned, staring at the test as if it might change if he looked away. "Two lines means positive," Jasmine confirmed, her voice wavering between terror and elation. "I'm pregnant. We're having a baby," Minho said, wonder transforming his features. "We created a life. Apparently we did." Jasmine laughed shakily. "Are you happy? I know we talked about someday, but this is sooner." Minho took her face in his hands with infinite gentleness. "I have never been happier in my entire life," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Never. Even with everything else happening? The business transitions, the potential conflicts. Especially with everything else happening," he insisted. "This, you, our child, is what makes all of it worthwhile. The reason behind every decision, every risk. A future worth fighting for." He placed his hand on her stomach, still flat but now charged with new significance. "Our son or daughter will grow up in the light, Jasmine. Safe, secure, proud of both their heritages. They'll know their Korean grandmother who pretends to disapprove of everything while secretly spoiling them rotten. They'll know your parents who will undoubtedly be the most devoted grandparents imaginable." Jasmine covered his hand with her own, imagining the tiny life growing beneath their joined fingers. "They'll have your determination and my creativity, your compassion and my strategic mind, your loyalty and my optimism." Minho smiled. "Poor child is doomed to greatness with that combination." They talked for hours, planning and dreaming, fears and hopes intertwined. The foundation's future, the business transitions, the security adjustments that would be necessary. How to blend Korean and African American traditions, what languages the child would learn, which holidays they would celebrate. "We'll need to convert the blue bedroom into a nursery," Jasmine mused, her head resting on Minho's chest as dawn approached. "It has the best morning light." Minho agreed, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her back. "And perhaps it's time to discuss your apartment." Jasmine's independent apartment had remained a symbol of her autonomy throughout their relationship, a space that was entirely hers, maintained even after she'd effectively moved into Minho's estate. They'd never pressed each other on the arrangement, both recognizing its importance in maintaining the careful balance of their partnership. "You think I should give it up?" Jasmine said, not a question but an observation. "I think," Minho said carefully, "that our child might benefit from having their parents under one roof consistently. But I also think there are other ways to preserve your independence, your separate identity." "Like what?" "The East Wing could be converted into your private studio. Completely yours, accessible only to you, designed to your specifications. A space that's sacred to your work, your creativity, the way the apartment has been." Jasmine considered this, picturing the estate's East Wing with its spectacular views and perfect natural light. A studio where she could work, think, be alone when she needed solitude. Not a replacement for her apartment, but an evolution, a new form of independence that accommodated their growing family. "I like that idea," she admitted. "It feels like moving forward rather than giving up something." "That's the intention." Minho kissed the top of her head. "Every change we make should feel like growth, not sacrifice." 6 months later, Jasmine stood in her new studio, surrounded by canvases in various stages of completion. Her pregnancy was now unmistakable, her round belly preceding her into rooms, inspiring protective instincts in everyone from Minho's security team to her foundation staff. The baby, a girl they had learned, was active, kicking and shifting as if already impatient to join the world. The studio had exceeded her expectations. A perfect blend of functionality and beauty, with north-facing windows for consistent light, storage systems for her materials, walls designed specifically for hanging works in progress. It had become her sanctuary during the tumultuous months that followed their discovery of the pregnancy. As Min-ho had predicted, his complete withdrawal from traditional territories had created significant disruption. There had been tense negotiations, veiled threats, occasional demonstrations of force. But the arrangements had held, bolstered by Park Sung-jae's unexpected alliance and Min-ho's meticulous preparation. The Kong family businesses now operated entirely within legitimate channels. Real estate, technology investments, art galleries, restaurants, and the foundation itself, which had expanded to 3 additional cities. Derek had disappeared. Jasmine didn't ask for details, and Min-ho didn't offer them. Whatever had happened, whatever Min-ho's people had done, Derek Wallace no longer posed any threat to their family or their future. Sometimes Jasmine felt a flicker of guilt about this. Not for Derek himself, who had forfeited any claim to her concern when he'd allied with those who wished her harm, but for the woman she'd once been, who might have been troubled by such decisive justice. But motherhood was changing her in unexpected ways, sharpening certain instincts while softening others. The fierce protectiveness she felt toward the life growing inside her extended to all the women at her foundation, to the family she and Min-ho were building, to the community they were creating together. A knock at the studio door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in," she called, setting down her brush. Min-ho entered, impeccable as always in a tailored suit despite the late hour. His expression brightened as he saw her, that particular smile he reserved only for her. "Working late?" he asked, crossing to kiss her softly. "Just finishing a piece for the new shelter opening," Jasmine explained, gesturing to the large canvas on her easel. The painting depicted a sunrise over water, golden light breaking through storm clouds, illuminating a path forward. "How was the meeting with the investors?" "Productive. The technology incubator is fully funded." Min-ho rested his hand on her belly, smiling when he felt a strong kick in response. "Someone's active tonight." "She always responds to your voice," Jasmine said, covering his hand with her own. "Already daddy's girl." Min-ho's expression softened with that now familiar wonder that appeared whenever he contemplated fatherhood. "I brought you something. From the foundation." He handed her an envelope, unmarked except for the Kong Arts Initiative logo. Curious, Jasmine opened it to find a handwritten letter. "Dear Mrs. Kong, *, I'm writing to thank you for saving my life. 6 months ago, I arrived at your shelter with nothing but the clothes on my back and bruises that hadn't yet faded. I was certain my husband would find me, would drag me back to the hell I'd finally escaped. *, but he didn't. Your security team kept me safe. Your art program helped me find my voice again. Your legal assistance helped me divorce him and secure a restraining order that has actually been enforced. *, today I signed the lease on my own apartment. Next month, I start classes at the community college. For the first time in 7 years, I'm not afraid every minute of every day. I'm planning for a future I never thought I'd live to see. *, I know you must receive many letters like this one. I know one more story of survival might not seem significant in the hundreds you've facilitated. But to me, it's everything. You built a bridge when I was drowning, and I crossed it to a life I never imagined possible. *, with eternal gratitude, *. Keisha Williams *. Tears blurred Jasmine's vision as she finished reading. Keisha, the young woman whose artwork had sold so well at the Emergence exhibition a year ago. The woman who had arrived at the foundation much as Jasmine herself had once arrived at Min-ho's gallery. Battered in body and spirit, desperate for a way forward. "She's really thriving," Jasmine said, wiping away tears. "Taewon mentioned she'd found an apartment, but I didn't know about the college classes." "Full scholarship," Min-ho added. "Anonymous donor." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "How anonymous?" Min-ho's expression remained innocent. "Completely." Jasmine didn't push the point. Min-ho's generosity often operated in the background, invisible but effective, changing lives without seeking recognition. Another aspect of the complex man she'd married, capable of ruthless action when necessary, but equally capable of profound compassion. "It's good timing, actually," Minho said, gesturing to the letter. "A reminder of why we built all this, why we continue building it. Especially today." "Why especially today?" Minho hesitated, a rare uncertainty crossing his features. "I received a call this afternoon. From your cousin William." Jasmine tensed. Her cousin worked for the district attorney's office, a connection that had occasionally created awkward dynamics given Minho's background. "What did William want?" "To inform me that my family's case has been officially closed," Minho said quietly. "The investigations into historical activities, the monitoring of current operations, all of it, formally concluded. We've been officially reclassified as a legitimate business entity with no ongoing criminal concerns." The significance of this announcement took a moment to fully register. For generations, the Kong family had operated under constant scrutiny from law enforcement. Investigated, monitored, suspected even when evidence was lacking. The official closure of their case represented the final step in Minho's transformation, the last barrier between his past and the future he envisioned. "That's incredible," Jasmine said, understanding how much this meant to him. "But why did William call you directly? That seems unusual for a DA's office." "It was a courtesy," Minho explained, "because of our family connection. And because—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Because he wanted me to know that your work with the foundation, your advocacy for survivors, had influenced the decision. That seeing the Kong name associated with such positive social impact had helped shift perceptions." Jasmine felt a warmth bloom in her chest. Pride, gratitude, vindication for the path they'd chosen together. So it wasn't just the business transitions. It was the foundation too. "It was you," Minho said simply. "Your vision, your heart. The way you transformed what the Kong name means in this city." He drew her close, one hand cradling her belly where their daughter continued her restless movements. "Our child will be born into a family with a clean slate, Jasmine. No shadows, no legacy of fear, no names spoken in whispers. Just the foundation we've built together. A business empire and a social mission, intertwined and strengthening each other." Jasmine leaned into him, absorbing the magnitude of what they'd accomplished together. From that desperate night at Fusion 82, when a frightened woman had faced a man who threatened her life and a stranger had stepped in to change the course of both their destinies, to this moment of quiet triumph. A journey neither of them could have imagined, yet somehow had been inevitable from their first meeting. "Do you ever think about how differently things might have turned out?" she asked softly. "If you hadn't been at that restaurant that night? If you'd looked away like everyone else?" "I couldn't look away," Minho said, his voice low against her hair. "Not from you. From the moment I saw you, I knew you were someone worth fighting for, worth changing for. And now look at us," Jasmine said, gesturing around the studio, at her pregnant belly, at the life they'd built together. "All because you refused to be a bystander. All because you found the courage to say no when I asked if you wanted to go home with him," Minho corrected. "My intervention created an opportunity, but your courage created our future." Their daughter kicked again, as if in agreement, making them both laugh. Outside the studio windows, the city lights spread below them like a carpet of stars, the same view that had captivated Jasmine on their first real date. The city that had witnessed their beginning, that now watched their legacy unfold. "I love you," Jasmine said simply, the words familiar yet never diminished by repetition. "You and our daughter and the life we're building." "And I love you," Minho replied, his hand gentle against her cheek. "More than I ever thought possible." In the distance, a siren wailed, a reminder that the city still held dangers, that perfect safety remained an illusion. But here, in this moment, with Minho's arms around her and their daughter stirring between them, Jasmine knew they had created something rare and precious. Not just security but sanctuary. Not just protection but partnership. A love powerful enough to transform threats into promises, powerful enough to build a future where "you're dead when we get home" was nothing but a distant memory, replaced by "you're loved, you're safe, you're home."